last book of November is Princesses Behaving Badly by Linda Rodriguez McRobbie, and this one kind of absorbed the least of, I guess. It was the only one that I hadn't touched at all before being in the hospital. This was purely read at the hospital and a little bit after, but even once I was home and kind of reading it, nothing was really sticking. But this is all stories of different princesses, or what can be kind of stretched into being called a princess, and how they weren't, you know, that they didn't fit that Disney princess mold. Murder and corruption and lascivious behavior and all that good stuff. It wasn't quite what I expected, and it's something that I think is going to be hit and miss with people. For me, it works because learning about these people that I haven't heard of before, even if they are somewhat mythological, or even if the stories about them aren't necessarily accurate, it excites the researcher in me, and then I want to find out more about them, so I will go spend some time looking into them, learning and geeking out. But for others who aren't nerdy research folks, reading these little stories in a book that is purportedly about real life people and real life events, that want the whole story and who want it all to be, you know, accurate and kind of astounding, this might not be quite as geared toward them, because a lot of it is just kind of anecdotal or hearsay, or things that have snowballed throughout the generations and have been kind of blown up into something. Sometimes things were stretched, but I guess that's kind of the nature of something like this. I guess it just kind of depends on how you approach things. So if you like watching, you know, History Channel or something like that, and these myth-based sort of research shows where a lot of what they're telling you isn't necessarily something that they can decide whether it is accurate or not. It's all just, this may be, this is alleged, stuff like that, then this might work for you. But if you don't like watching those because you just look at it and think, there's no way they can prove that, or this is boring, or you take them too seriously, or whatever it is, then maybe this just isn't the book for you. Or at least that's my impression of it in the crazy time that I was having in November. So maybe that's not even accurate, whatever, I don't know. It's just how I kind of interpreted it. I liked it. It made me want to dig into these people a little bit more, but if you don't want to dig, and if you just want kind of what it's promising, I guess, then it might work for you and it might not. And once again, I think be a really cool talking point, really cool coffee table book. And again, from Quirk, so it's got that sort of Quirk sensibility, and that tends to always work for me. So that was what I read in November, and that was so much longer than I had intended it to be, but we're already in this now, so on to December. December was a free month for me, and I was basically just gonna completely follow my gut and read whatever was calling my name, but there was one book that was required, not really required, but one that I was supposed to read, and it was the only set book of December, and it was because you guys voted for it. It was the Stack of 5 winner for our Big Fat Books theme, and that was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. And you know what? I failed. I tried with this one. You can see some of my tabs where I did read some of it, and I gave it the old college try. I gave it more than the college try, because in college you don't try so much. But I had to set this one to the side, which I'm going to do now because it's heavy and I don't want to hold it. It's not that I didn't like it. I'm not going to rate it yet and give it a thumbs up or thumbs down, but I wasn't connecting with it. I read probably about 90 to 100 pages, and though I understand that when you're talking about a 900-page book, that's only about 10% of the book, which is, you know, 30 or so pages in a normal-sized book. And so I had a lot of people saying, you've only read 10% of the book, like that's not enough, you need to give it more of a chance. But here's the thing, I'm not willing to apply that logic throughout. I'm not giving you 10 times the chances just because you want to be wordy and never get to the point. If I don't connect, if I feel indifferent, that is when I quit a book. Not necessarily when I hate it, not when it's irritating me, but when I just don't care. Even though it was a charming style and there were things that I liked about it, I just kept questioning what is the point and why do I care? And it gets to a point where that starts to become a time suck and just drags me down. So I would set it aside and I would pick up something else and say, well, I'm just going to read this and see if that catches me, and it always would. And when I was done, I'd go back to the book, try a little bit more, and I'd be like, no, I'm going to try something else. And I just kept doing that until finally I had to admit to myself that it wasn't going to happen this month. Though sorry, I know you guys voted for it, I know a lot of you like it and wanted to hear my thoughts on it, but just no, it wasn't working for me. I will try it again later, I think, when I'm feeling much more patient, but for now I just didn't care. Someone suggested getting it on audiobook, and I might try that. Maybe that will engage me a little bit more. However, I shudder to think how long that audiobook would be. Oh, maybe not. I really don't know, guys. Let me know what your thoughts were on Jonathan Strange. Maybe one of you will convince me to pick it up sooner rather than later, but for now, that big beast of a book is going back on the shelves. But instead of that, in December, I ended up reading both of the books in the Morganville Vampires Volume 3, which was Lords of Misrule and Carpe Corpus. The most ridiculous titles, but I love them. This one didn't catch me quite as much as the other volumes did, which is kind of surprising because that seemed to be the opposite reaction on Goodreads from what I saw. A lot of people who didn't love the beginning of the series really liked Lords of Misrule and Carpe Corpus. Not that I didn't, I thought they were really good, and Myrnin will always win everything for me. Any book with him in it I'm gonna read and probably love, but in the beginning I loved this series. I thought it was so fun, such a great funk breaker, and this was a little easier for me to put down than those were. Again, could have completely been the result of my mood and the fact that there was probably about a year or a year and a half in between reading the two, you know, reading the ones that came before this. So that could have been part of it. But that being said, I still loved them. Rachel Caine has this habit of leaving me on the fence for part of the book until you get to the end, and then it's just like consuming and you have to know what's gonna happen, and it ends on a cliffhanger and you're like, no! I'm gonna go with thumbs up on both of these. I do like this series, and if you haven't read it and you're looking for something fun and kind of soap opera-y, but in that good kind of good cheesy way, I would recommend these. It's so over the top and ridiculous that you just eat it up. Then I couldn't decide what I wanted to read next, but I was in the mood for a certain type of book, so I Instagrammed two options, Howl's Moving Castle and Dealing with Dragons, and asked what I should read, and though the votes were very enthusiastic for both books, I ended up going with Dealing with Dragons by Patricia C. Reed. This is the first in the Enchanted Forest series, and it's kind of fairy tale-esque, which is part of why I went with it, because it'll work for Fairy Tale Fortnight, but also because I really like Patricia's style, and she always kind of leaves me feeling happy, and I needed that. I think if I had read this as, you know, an 11 or 12-year-old, that I would have been an ardent fan of this series and the main character. A very strong, opinionated anti-princess, and it had really fun, surprising humor. Adult me would have liked more out of it, of course, but it helped me kind of connect with Kid Misty and totally get into it on that level. The cover is a little bit horrid. The story inside is really, really fun. Great if you have any middle grade fantasy readers in your life, or you want to kind of be a kid again for a moment. Kind of like Ella Enchanted or anything like that, books or movies like that. It's really fun. It takes all those standard tropes and just turns them on their heads. Good times. And then I had to pick up Liar's Moon by Elizabeth C. Bunce, which I had been waiting to read all year. I've stuck this in Stack of 5 a couple of times, hoping that you guys would pick it. I've picked it up in months where I thought I would have some extra time and wanted to read it, and never ended up having that extra time. I knew December was going to be a free month, and I knew this was going to be one of the books that I read. I'm so glad I did. I loved StarCrossed, the first book in the series. It was so great to be back in Digger's world and kind of have her voice again. I really, really like the world building and the style of this. It's just kind of seamless and flows for me. And I really, really wish that more people knew about the series and read the series. Not only because I think it's fantastic and I want people to read Elizabeth's books because I think she has a really great style, but also because there is no third book to the series as of yet. It just didn't sell well enough, and not enough buzz was kind of out there about it, and so it wasn't picked up by the publisher, which is crushing to me, not only because I like Elizabeth and I like these stories and I want more, but this ends on a cliffhanger, you guys. You're killing me. Like, there needs to be a third book because I need to know what happens. And I want Digger to have her story finished. Like, I feel like she's cheated. I feel like she's a real person and she's been cheated. That's how much I connect to Digger and this story. If you haven't already read these, pick them up and read them and spread the word about them, push them on people. If you have read them, again, push them on people, spread the word, contact the publisher and let them know that you would like to see a third book be published. I will leave their info below. Contact them. Let's let them know, grassroots style, they need to not leave us hanging. They need to finish out the series. And I'm crying a little inside. I need to know. Needless to say, that was a thumbs up. And lastly, the very last book I read in 2013 came in this pretty little box right here. And that would be The Winter's Curse by Marie Rutkowski. And yes, I did use my dagger as a bookmark very carefully because I don't want the dagger to be damaged, but I couldn't resist. If you follow me on Goodreads, you'll already know. Huge thumbs up. As I said in my last book haul where I talked about this one, pre-order it. This one comes out in March. If you like fantasy, if you like good sort of star-crossed love stories, if you like good world building, if you like the books that I read, if you want the it book of 2014, any of those things apply to you, go ahead and pre-order this one. You're gonna want to read it. You're probably gonna want to own it. This is a really strong start to a series. I loved the world building, I loved the characters. Not unreserved, there were a couple little things that did kind of niggle at me, but I think that's only because they weren't as strong as the rest of this very strong book, because even the things that felt a little less than were still really good. So just, I don't know how much I can really even say about this one. I feel like if I start talking about it, I'm gonna start giving things away, and I don't want to do that, but just get it. Longest rewind ever. I will try to never ever do 2 months of rewinds altogether again. I'm starting to get hoarse, actually. You might have to speak to me in Morse. I couldn't resist. Did it zoom in again? Guys, I don't know when it zoomed in and I cannot record this again. It is so long, my camera's dying again, and I'm hoarse. It's not gonna happen. So if it was funky, I'm sorry. That was everything I read in November and December. Let me know if you made it through this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. And let me know how your end of 2013 reading went. That is all for now. Thanks for slogging through this, and as always, happy reading!